The headline in the local business journal earlier this month read, "Master Promoter Takes Art Museum Job," and went on to say John Buchanan Jr. brings impressive resume, plenty of enthusiasm to the Portland Art Museum. In introducing John today, I'll tell you in a little bit about some of that resume. I anticipate, just from having talked briefly with him here, and as some of you already know, that there'll be no shortage of the enthusiasm as he takes the podium. And as for the master promotion, well, he's been with the museum certainly for less than 6 months and has already pulled out one major plum for Portland. The museum will host in 1996 an exhibit of treasures from the imperial tombs of China, covering more than 23 centuries of Chinese art. Portland will be the exclusive West Coast site for this world-class exhibition. As the man who closed the deal on this exhibition, John Buchanan is beginning to perform in Portland in the dynamic and creative style he's established in his relatively short career as arts leader. He comes to the city from Memphis, where he was director of the Dixon Gallery and Gardens. During his Memphis tour between 1986 and early this year, he was credited with guiding a renovation of the original Dixon residence, adding $8 million in new money to the endowment fund of this private nonprofit art museum, and bringing important new acquisitions and gifts to its collection. At the Dixon, Mr. Buchanan increased attendance fivefold to almost 200,000 visitors a year and more than tripled memberships to 5,700 households. In announcing John's hiring earlier this year, the museum's board chair, Melvin Pete Marks, who is with us today, said, "We are at a crossroads in the museum's 100-year history. With the acquisition of the Masonic Temple properties, the Portland Art Museum is poised for dramatic expansion, and John Buchanan is a gifted museum developer." John is fortunate at the Portland Art Museum to have a strong partnership and support in his director of development. She's a former colleague of John's at the Dixon, who is also, coincidentally, his wife, Lucy. And she's with us today, and I want to welcome her to the Portland City Club. And now please join me in welcoming Lucy's husband, John Buchanan, to the City Club podium.
Thanks for that very nice and flattering introduction, Mr. Barney, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm so very glad to have this opportunity to make my first Portland public address here at the City Club. Although I must admit to being slightly intimidated, in fact, frankly daunted, by following so closely on the heels of the flawless performance by our National Endowment for the Arts director and award-winning actress, I might add, Jane Alexander. I will do my best, however, to follow through on Miss Alexander. I'm told that your City Club, at 78 years of age, is the granddaddy of Portland civic forums and is distinguished by its leadership on framing the issues of our day. As the new leader of the Portland Art Museum, I'm delighted that you provide this context for discussing our city's cultural life and cultural issues, as well as the social and political issues of our time. I believe that certainly the health and the viability of the arts in our community help define the very livability of our region and have a significant impact on our economy through both employment and through tourism. In addition, your City Club, by reputation, is both venerable and vigorous, a distinction that I also believe you share with the Portland Art Museum, which at 102 years of age is literally and figuratively poised for a rebirth as it moves into our second century. Today, I want to share with you my excitement about the city I now call my home, about the Portland Art Museum, and about what I believe will be this museum's renaissance. Each day, as I experience the Pacific Northwest, I'm overwhelmed by its beauty. And as I explore the museum and discover new treasures and possibilities, I see more clearly how our museum can become the glittering jewel in the crown of this region. Whenever I speak with new friends, I find they're generally interested in how I got to where I am. So let me tell you just a little bit more than Mr. Barney told you. I am a native Tennessean, born in Nashville, Tennessee. I attended the University of the South, an Episcopal men's college, and went on to receive my graduate degree in art history at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, having studied both at Pratt Institute in New York and also at Oxford University, Oxford, England. I started my career at the Tennessee State Museum in Nashville before moving to Washington, D.C. to work with the American Association of Museums. And from there, I moved to Peoria, Illinois, to serve as the executive director of the Lakeview Museum of Arts and Sciences for 4.5 years. Then, 8 years ago, I became the director of the Dixon Gallery and Gardens in Memphis, one of the most beautiful museums in this world, housing a superb collection of French Impressionist paintings and European porcelain, a special exhibition schedule par excellence, all nestled in 17 acres of English landscape gardens. And as I say that, I say it with great pride, for today I have with me one of my trustees from the Dixon Gallery and Gardens. I have told people that never have I had more visitors in such a short span of time than I have since I've been in Portland. And I'm thrilled that Melinda Minky Burns and her husband Stephen are with us today. Now, like Lewis and Clark, in some respects, I found my way to Oregon, and I imagine that you want to know why I chose Portland and the Portland Art Museum at this point in my career. In truth, I did not, like Lewis and Clark, set out to come here. My intention last fall was to visit Portland, to meet our museum search committee, and very politely decline the committee's invitation to interview for the position of executive director. But when my wife Lucy and I came out to have a look, we saw and discovered what an incredible opportunity lies ahead for all of us. A museum ripe with unrealized potential. And for someone like me, an activist by nature, this museum, at this point on its life cycle, presents a most enticing challenge. For I believe, as Mr. Barney said, that the Portland Art Museum is poised on the edge of greatness. Let me explain where I'm coming from on that. When I spoke with colleagues in the art world before accepting the museum's offer, many of those brilliant people pointed out that Portland is the only city of its size in this country that hasn't fully developed its art museum. I'm sure that many of you in this audience would agree to that. I'm not embarrassed to say that there have been times when this art museum has been one of the weakest threads in the fabric of Portland's cultural life. And as one of the measures of any great city is its art museum, if Portland is to be all that we in this room want it to be, our city must have a great art museum. Unlike the striking baseball players, it's time for all of us in this room and throughout the entire community to step up to the plate and, as our friends at Nike say, just do it. Now, if we are to just do it, where do we begin? What are the museum's strengths? First and foremost, they are our collections of art. What the Portland Art Museum has stored in its vaults would make many museums in other cities, including our much ballyhooed neighbor to the north, Seattle, green with envy. Although the Portland Art Museum is a general museum with truly diverse holdings, we are not what I would call a World Survey museum. Rather, our museum is a collection of collections. I've spent part of my summer working with colleagues, some of the brightest museum experts in this country, on a fact-finding mission, if you will, to survey our collections, much of which are locked away in our vaults. Let me tell you just a bit about what I've learned. The Portland Art Museum has one of the finest Northwest Coast Native American collections in the world, second only to that found in Vancouver. This is complemented by the extensive Elizabeth Cole Butler collection of other Native American works, numbering into the thousands, and including remarkable headdresses and beadwork, paraflesh, basketry, jewelry, cradle boards, just to name a few of those thousands of objects. In addition, the museum has a small but highly important and very choice collection of pre-Columbian art, replete with remarkable tomb figures never on view. We're currently in the process of recreating a gallery to display the museum's peerless collection of royal treasures from Africa's western grasslands region of Cameroon. This collection, acquired by Clara and Paul Gebauer over a period of 30 years, is so notable that the National Endowment for the Arts, along with the Murdoch Trust, stepped up to bat to fund its reinstallation. The Portland Art Museum is in good company in presenting the Gebauer collection, for the balance of their collection resides at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. By the way, just a commercial here, I hope you'll save the weekend of October 7th, 8th, and 9th to help us celebrate the reopening of our Cameroon Gallery. A reception, a symposium, and a Museum Family Sunday are all being planned even as I speak. In our Asian collection, we have exceptional holdings, especially in the areas of Japanese woodblock prints and paintings, which were recently seen in the museum's spectacular exhibition, The Floating World Revisited, organized by our own Asian curator, Donald Jenkins. The exhibition subsequently traveled to the renowned Cleveland Museum of Art, signaling that good things begin in Portland. We also have fine examples of Chinese tomb figures, archaic bronzes, and Tang and Sung dynasty stoneware. This, of course, is all in addition to our choice collections of art of Western civilization, or as those who are politically correct say, paintings, sculpture, and drawings by dead, white, European male artists. Only a fraction of these treasures are on view at any one time. During my early, hectic days, and by the way, I'm still in them, of acquainting myself with the museum staff and volunteers, poring over the budget, and attending to the myriad of details that this position involves, our staff soon discovered that their slightly weary director could be instantly revived, in fact, near to euphoria, by a trip into the museum's vault. That's where I discovered, for example, that the museum has not one but two paintings by American expatriate John Singer Sargent, a wonderful American Impressionist selection of works by Childe Hassam done during his sojourns in Oregon, and an absolutely ravishing selection of French Impressionist and Post-Impressionist paintings by artists such as Renoir and Redon. And then, of course, there's the Gordon Gilkey collection, an encyclopedic collection of works of art on paper in the museum's new $1.3 million print center. As we say at the museum, Dr. Gilkey never met a print he didn't like. And the Portland Art Museum and this community are the recipients of his affection and largesse. The Gilkey Print Center, by the way, has a study room, much like a rare book room in a library, where by appointment, scholars, classes, and people like you and me can literally hold a Rembrandt in our hands. The museum's also noted for its outstanding Robert Evans collection of contemporary sculpture, including works by George Siegel, Barbara Hepworth, Richard Serra, as well as our historic collections of sculpture by Rodin, Degas, Renoir, Brancusi, Arp, and Archipinko, just to name a few. Not only is the Portland Art Museum a collection of collections, we are also a collection of buildings, including the magnificent Beluski structure done in the 1930s, the Masonic Temple, which I'm now pleased to say that it's officially ours, the Sculpture Mall in between, as well as the Masonic parking lot. All told, the Portland Art Museum now occupies an entire city block and a half, and yet space is our greatest limitation. I know this seems strange, and it seems strange for me to say that I feel almost like a man standing by the sea and craving a drink of water. But within our current configuration, it's very difficult, nigh to impossible, for the museum to show the marvels of our permanent collection in the ways that they deserve and need to be exhibited. Many spectacular objects cannot be shown at all, much less bringing in special, important traveling exhibitions. By the way, just one more example. In the vault this summer, I discovered a pre-Columbian Aztec mask, once covered in tesserae of jade, that is so rare and so important that none remain in Mexico today. Most of these were so rare and so coveted that they were shipped to Europe. And in some respects, I feel like we're committing a crime by not having that object out on view to teach what it has to say about how it was made and where it comes from and the culture in which it lived. Space for our programs is also a problem. The museum has an outstanding film department, the Northwest Film Center, which is noted for its Filmmaker in the Schools projects. Our Art on the Edge program of avant-garde performance art that pushes the envelope and challenges the intellect quite often has to vie with lectures and films for program space. And our outstanding education program for youngsters is at maximum capacity. 90% of the schools in the metropolitan area, including Taggart and Clark County, will send classes to the museum this year. 30,000 youngsters participate in these Eye on Art tours. They learn not only how to look and appreciate great works of art, but as a result, they learn more about the world around us. These visits help children, help our young people develop their powers of observation and expand their understanding of history and culture. And in fact, when we teach them, we are planting the seeds for a new cultural generation for years to come. I'd like to accommodate not just every school, but in fact, every classroom. Hence, as you've heard, you might see that I consider the great challenge of my career to be that of identifying the needs of the Portland Art Museum through its collections and programs, and then create the most appropriate spaces to meet these needs. I've learned to anticipate that when I say this, that the next question is always, what do we plan to do with the Masonic Temple? I must answer, I wish I could say. It exists, it's there, and I truly don't have a preconceived notion about its future. Our process is that we want the needs of the museum, education, exhibition, performance, to drive what happens in the Beluski Building and what happens in the Masonic Temple. The temple was built as a ceremonial, collegial, club-like space, not a museum. What it can withstand within the confines of its structure as it exists is still the unknown part of the equation. But we've already begun a space analysis, and I hope to have ideas, if not full answers, very soon. Pete Mark, the chairman of the museum's board, is fond of saying that the Portland Art Museum is first and foremost a people place. I could not agree with him more. In fact, when I visited Portland last Thanksgiving, the museum was presenting The Floating World Revisited. And Lucy and I were struck, dumbfounded, by the sight of lines out the door. 200,000 visitors came to the Art Museum this past year. I'm not surprised at that statistic. According to last year's Scarborough research study of adults in the Portland metropolitan area, including Clackamas, Multnomah, Washington, and Yamhill counties, 30% visited an art gallery or museum in the past year. Only Oregon's state parks, the Portland Zoo, and the Rose Festival drew greater percentages of visitors. Of course, those of you who know me, and more the merrier is my motto, must guess that my goal is to have 100% of Portland's adults and children visit the Portland Art Museum at least once a year, and preferably much more often. When people tell me, as they sometimes do, the Portland Art Museum is stuffy or elitist, I challenge them because the people I saw waiting in line to see the floating world and that I see each day as I walk through our galleries are not a small or homogeneous group. They are clearly not from one socioeconomic bracket. They are young, they're old, of diverse heritage, of different means. They come to our museum for a different number of reasons, but most of all because of their desire for a transcending experience with art. What touches one person to the very core of his or her being is probably entirely different for each of us seated in this room. I may be riveted by a painting which leaves you cold. You may be enchanted by something that fails to speak to me. But I guarantee you that either through our permanent collection, lectures, programs, or one of our traveling exhibitions, the Portland Art Museum has the capacity to touch each of us. There is literally something for everyone at the Portland Art Museum. Assuring that the museum provides a non-threatening environment in which people can come face to face with great works of art is the heart of my agenda. Just yesterday, one of our guards told me how he noticed children lingering to ponder sculptures we now have on view as part of a new special exhibition, Passionate Visions of the American South. He could see their fascination as they studied how everyday materials as mundane as an old bed spring and rusted farm equipment had been transformed into a lyrical horse. My goal is to offer fascinating experiences to every museum visitor. That is why I so firmly believe that one of the most compelling programs a museum such as ours can offer is its special exhibition program. It's the signal of our vitality to the larger community. If you're one of those people who think about the museum and say, well, if I go every couple of years, I've seen it, I challenge you to pay us a visit right away. If you wait even a few weeks, you'll miss something great. An exhibition, a new lecture, a musical performance, a film. The same study I mentioned earlier found that 43% of the adults in our metropolitan area have traveled outside the country in the last 3 years. We then have a population base that is at once cosmopolitan and curious, people who want to experience other places and cultures. I'm glad we're so well traveled. But I also know that many people in our community will never have the opportunity to travel to New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, much less London, Paris, and Rome, to see great works of art. That is why it is so important to bring the finest available to our city through the Portland Art Museum. It is our responsibility to make the best available to our community. This is the crux of the way I hope to develop the museum's special exhibition program. And I want to give you just a sneak preview of what's coming up in the months ahead. In November, we'll unveil The Passion of Rodin, almost 100 sculptures in bronze and plaster, borrowed from the renowned collection of Iris and B. Gerald Cantor, the most important collection of Rodin sculpture outside of Paris and the finest private collection in the world. Works from the artist's entire oeuvre will be found in the exhibition, including groups from all of the major monuments. This will be followed in the winter by Breaking Barriers, an exhibition done for us and with us by the Contemporary Craft Museum in New York, featuring contemporary furniture and crafts by cutting-edge artists, such as Dale Chihuly chandeliers, Wendell Castle furniture, and work by such notables as Victoria Fry and Jenny Ruffner. Then there's our mid-career retrospective of the very fine Portland contemporary artist Lucinda Parker, as well as an exhibition of paintings by the hot young New York artist Alexis Rockman. And I can't forget to mention gold boxes from the collection of Arthur and Rosalind Gilbert, the most important collection of golden and jewel objects outside of the Louvre. And there'll be more. We're working on it every day, every hour. I can only say to you that seeing is believing, and you must come and experience these exhibitions. Ever since I arrived in Portland, practically the first question on people's lips has been, what is my vision for the Portland Art Museum? Well, I'm certainly better prepared to answer this today than I was 10 weeks ago, fresh off the airplane, as I made my first remarks at the museum. I had thought at that time that I would take my time, become intimate with the marvelous collections of the museum, soak up the ambience of the Beluski building, create the exhibition schedule I just outlined for you? Well, you know what they say about best laid plans. Sometimes opportunity arrives on its own schedule, and in this case, as you just heard, the Portland Art Museum has a magnificent one-time only opportunity that we simply could not let pass by. For as Mr. Barney said, from May 1 to mid-September 1996, the museum will be the only West Coast venue to present, without a doubt, according to the Chinese government, the largest and finest exhibition of Chinese imperial treasures ever allowed to travel outside the People's Republic of China. The organizers of this cultural exchange, the Bureau of Cultural Relics of the People's Republic of China, say that this show surpasses the Son of Heaven in exhibition, in breadth, and in distinction. And I quote, "Over 60% of the objects are classified as grade A national treasures, a percentage which is unprecedented in any exhibition before," end quote. Among the fabulous 250 objects, we'll find life-size terracotta soldiers and horses from the burial tombs at Xi'an, 2 7-foot-tall stone guardian lions, which weigh 7 to 8 tons apiece, a jade burial suit sewn with golden threads, an entire throne room from the Qing dynasty, including a gold lacquered throne and a 9-foot-tall 7-panel gold screen, bricks from the Great Wall of China, the 9 phoenix and dragon crown made of gold, pearls, and precious stones, tomb guardian figures from porcelain, pendants and jewelry from jade, gold, and silver. Given our most conservative estimates, it's our hope that 200,000 people will see the exhibition, many of them tourists who will add dollars to our local economy. Cultural tourism is big business. And do you know that tourism is Oregon's second largest industry? To give you a sense of the economic stimulus that derives from an exhibition as I've described, we can just look to the statistics from Memphis, Tennessee, which has been organizing such blockbuster exhibitions for 8 years. There, almost 70% of the visitors come from out of town, spending additional dollars on food, lodging, shopping, and visiting other attractions. Each dollar spent on attending the exhibition brings an infusion of $3.50 in additional spending in the community. While the Portland Art Museum has snagged this show for the city, presenting it will be a community-wide endeavor that will involve the Portland, Oregon Visitors Association, our hotels, our retail community, and I hope each and every one of you here today. I welcome you to become involved not only with this exhibition, but with all of the museum's activities. First of all, let me invite you to join the Portland Art Museum. We receive a relatively small amount of public funding, and every individual and corporate membership dollar counts for us. And when you join, I hope you'll also visit the museum frequently. Let us know what you like and what you'd like to see more of. The Portland Art Museum is my new home, but it is not mine alone. It is your art museum as well. Only together can we make it the great art museum that this city deserves and one of the greatest regional art museums in this country. Thank you.
John, thank you for that exciting preview and for the enthusiasm that you bring to us and to the Portland Art Museum. Now it's time for questions from the City Club audience. As you can see, the microphone is here in the forward center of the room. Please come to it, give us your name, identify that you are a member of the City Club, and please help us with the program by abiding by the 30-second rule on your question. And to the first question then, again, Andrew Wheeler.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Buchanan, John, I want to hear what you like. Who is your favorite artist, and what is your favorite work of art? And then why?
I can answer that very easily. My former chairman of the board says that the painting I like the most or the work of art is the painting or work of art I'm standing in front of when you ask me that question. I have very Catholic taste. I enjoy works of art from all periods. For the past 8 years, I've done my mini PhD in French painting, so I would say that probably that's one of my favorite areas of study. I'm also very enthusiastic and a private collector of contemporary works of art, and in fact, usually, as our board of trustees get to know us and visit our house, they look at our art collection and say, gee, if we'd known your taste in art, we would have never hired you. Is that good enough?
I'm Bill Crane from the Program Committee. Portland is a city with a wealth of distinguished cultural institutions in performing and visual arts, and in fact we have far more than is typical for a city of this demography. Such nonprofit institutions appropriately exist to fulfill perceived community needs, and hence, I believe, they're deserving of our philanthropic support. What most urgent community needs do our art museum and our city face, and which do you hope to serve?
Let me answer the big question first. We are a general art museum for a metropolitan area with diverse interest, and hence I think we have a responsibility to satisfy and scratch as many of those needs as we possibly can. And because of our collections, we have the mandate to look across the boards and across the centuries to be able to do that. Secondly, let me say that the greatest need of the Portland Art Museum vis-a-vis serving those needs is our space restriction and space configuration. And on top of that, the desperate need to climate control and stabilize the environments in our Beluski building.
The questions? We have one from the audience here. Read it, Dan. Recently, an article in the Oregonian told how the Smithsonian Institution is putting politically correct signs next to some of its exhibits. Do you think the Portland Art Museum should label some of its paintings by a white European male?
I read that same article, and for those of you who did not, I would advise you to look at the Oregonian. I think it was the Wednesday edition of the newspaper, and for those of you who've not read the article, let me give you just a snapshot of what it said. The Museum of Natural History is now being called into question by a number of different groups for the extensive relabeling that it's undergoing right now. For example, one of the great treasures of the Smithsonian is a large elephant that was shot in Africa and brought back as the trophy of one of the great white hunters. It is one of the symbols of the museum for children in terms of its size and scale and monumental impact. Everyone goes to see the elephant. Now the label goes into extensive documentation about the type of person who killed the elephant, why he killed the elephant, how he used it to aggrandize his own career and ego, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's fine, as long as that sort of statement can be substantiated and that that's not a rumor. I think that what is interesting about interpreting works of art is having interpretation from many different levels. And one of the things that I'd like to do at the Portland Art Museum is have artists interpret paintings, critics interpret paintings, art historians interpret paintings, modernist, historic revisionist interpret paintings, so that we have a variety of different messages pointed and directed around any one work of art. Because I think only when you see it from a sort of multiple perspective do you understand truly how that work of art can affect many different kinds of people. So yes, I think that's something that we would like to experiment with.
Charlie Davis, member. I'm aware that you're a new kid on the block, but have you explored any possibility of greater interaction with the other institutions in your neighborhood, the Historical Society, the library, public broadcasting, as a way of integrating a lot of nonprofit organizations into the art and culture of the community?
I have tried to do just that, and certainly we have only turned the first page in those relationships. I'm a great believer that what's good for one of us is good for all of us, and that in today's times, especially tight economic times, that together certain organizations could do what one alone might not be able to do. The Oregon Historical Society alone, we share a patron who says, gee, if you guys can come up with a project that mutually benefits you, then I'll help support that project for both institutions. What we're trying to do is reach out and embrace and interact with as many organizations as we possibly can. I, in my short time here, have had several meetings with discussions with the folks of the organizations who are on the park blocks, that certainly is my own backyard, as well as having a meeting and reception for the leaders of all of the cultural organizations across the city in our own museum back in July. And so I think it's the beginning of a dialogue, and we want to be as accommodating and helpful as we possibly can at the Portland Art Museum and share whatever resources or assets we have with everyone.
Clark Worth, club member and Metropolitan Arts Commission. Charlie asked my partnerships question, so I'd like to ask another one. Could you tell us what's the secret to getting the recent exhibition of Chinese antiquities, I guess you could call it the daughter of the Son of Heaven?
Being at the right time at the right place. The exhibition, special exhibition business is very political. It is getting in on the ground floor of exhibitions as they are being organized, and it is the museum's ability to reciprocate, especially in terms of other museums organizing exhibitions, with our own collection. And frankly, that's one of the nice things about the Portland Art Museum, is that we do have a few chits. I was contacted very recently. I'm probably telling a story out of school, but it's interesting and I'll tell you anyway. I was contacted recently by one of my colleagues at the Art Institute of Chicago, who I was surprised was calling me because he's very high up in the ladder of the art world. And he said, "Oh, John, I understand that you have a great Monet water lily. We're doing the greatest Monet show ever. And I'm doing the catalog. It will only appear in Chicago. It will be the show to end all shows on Monet. And would the museum consider lending its Monet?" I was like Brer Rabbit. Well, let me see. As I was feverishly writing myself a note that we must lend that Monet. So that's one of the ways that museums get exhibitions, is by being able to reciprocate with their own collections. But politics certainly plays into it, and being at the right place at the right time.
Kurt Wabring, member. You mentioned the great Northwest Native American collection. Have you had an opportunity yet to talk with some of the Native American community and their plans to develop a cultural center and museum?
I have had only cursory conversations about that. I'm not a scholar in that area. I'm a newcomer to that particular topic, but I have tried to learn our own collections as a point from which to speak. We have a Native American Council of our museum. Ron Crozier, who's here today, is the president of that, and we'll work closely with any groups that want to examine and explore that cultural heritage and history. I think it's important for us to have those treasures out. It's really our long suit, frankly, at the museum, our Native American collections, and we should be about finding an expert, a curator who can come to us and work with us closely, and hence with other groups, in really making the most out of those collections for us all.
I have another question in writing here. In light of your space needs, what is the future of PNCA, the Pacific Northwest College of Art?
As most of you know, the Pacific Northwest College of Art has been under the umbrella of the Portland Art Museum really since its inception, if my history is correct. We are currently in communication and conversation about disengaging in terms of administration and finances and the like. They will be, as far as I know right now, a resident in the Hoffman wing of the Portland Art Museum that was built in the late 60s, early 1970s, until a point unforeseen in the future. And I simply don't know much more than that right now.
Hi, Christina Butters. I'm not a member of City Club, but I'm a member of the Portland Art Museum. And I was just wondering if you had plans for the museum's acquisitions, new acquisitions, or anything down the line that you have your eye on?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was asked, do I have plans about acquisitions for the museum? As I stated, we have quite a lot of things of our own already. There are certainly holes in the collection and voids in the collection that could be enhanced with acquisitions, either through gift or through purchase. We are always on the prowl. Our curators are always interested in talking to potential donors of works of art. I think that probably what we need to do is assess where we are in terms of our own collections and develop a plan about how we should and want to grow depending upon the needs of the collection and the desires of the community. One of the first things that I did while I was interviewing here was asked to be introduced to collectors around the community, because I think it's important that the museum and the collectors walk hand in hand through life. Perhaps we can help them, perhaps their collections could become meaningful for the museum and for this community. It is interesting. We do have a number of small funds, and I say small, relatively small funds that have been established through the largesse of donors and contributors throughout the decades to purchase particular kinds of works. We have a silver fund, for example, that the interest can be used on an annual basis only for the purchase of silver objects. And so that dictates us and drives us in a certain direction. The first week that I was on the job, I received a telephone call from a trust officer at one of our local banks saying to me, "John, the museum must spend $11,000 on a French work of art in the next 2 days or you lose the money." And so that certainly did make me hop right in to begin looking at French works of art. And so there are a number of forces and thoughts and concerns that dictate that. Our Board of Trustees has a collections committee that's guided by its chairman, Richard Brown, and really it's through that committee and working with our staff that plans for acquisitions will be made.
I have a question, if I may. In a community where arts often is joined in discussion with raising funds, we've talked for 45 minutes without talking that particular problem. What kind of a situation is the museum in, and what plans do you have in terms of fundraising if there's a need for that?
I think that we're in a very stable situation. We ended our fiscal year with a break-even plus budget. Our trustees have worked diligently to pay off the Masonic Temple property project. And my feeling about our support is that every dollar counts, and our community, our individuals, our corporations, certainly we're looking to them for support. But my great belief is that if we have a good product, if we service the needs of the community, that in fact the largesse of the community will come to us, and that it's our responsibility to service those needs, wrap our arms around the community, give them what they need, and I'm not worried about where the money will come from if we do that.
Ted Kay, City Club member, and from the Oregon Historical Society. I want to ask a question and put in a little joint plug for the ice cream social that the Portland Art Museum and the Oregon Historical Society will be sponsoring in the park blocks this Sunday with free ice cream and lots of entertainment.
And now to your question.
And my question, I was staying within 30 seconds. My question actually relates to that, and that is your thoughts on the development of a cultural district, which we've been talking about in the South Parks area with the cultural institutions that ring it.
Well, simply put, I'm all for it. I've been in one meeting of my cultural neighbors up and down the park block since I've been here. Chet Orloff has been one of those who's really led the way in this, and as you all know, I'm a newcomer to this. I think it's certainly an area of town that Portland can be very proud of, and as importantly as an educational center it might be, I think it's also a way to bring people from out in the suburbs and around the city and in other parts of the state down to the heart of Portland. And I think that if they come for us, that also the retailers, other commercial businesses will share in those visits and good results. So I think it's something that we all want to fan and stimulate and cultivate as much as we possibly can, and I'm willing on behalf of the museum to, as I said, put our resources forward and back up anything that our fellow neighbors want to do.
John, Kathleen Johnson-Kuhn, Business Committee for the Arts. I'd like to ask you if you could assess our business support for the arts in this community compared to other cities around the country, and if you have a special plan for how to work in partnership with businesses on projects in the museum.
That's a good question, Kathleen, because having been a museum director in Peoria and then in Memphis, I have some points of, and working in Nashville, I have some points of reference. I think that the business community is very strong here. I feel a sense of economic stability. I feel some momentum moving ahead. I feel the desire on a great number of businesses to support good causes in the community. What I find is a situation where there are large businesses here who are always gone back to time and time and time again, the same watering troughs. And I think while we all need to keep our channels of communication open with those particular philanthropic organizations, I think that there are other opportunities for all of us out in the community to work with smaller businesses, perhaps closely held businesses that might not can do $25 or $30 or $50 or $100,000, but sure would like to make a contribution to something good that's happening in Portland. So I think that's one of the keys to sharing the wealth, so to speak, across the community. Again, what I think, Kathleen, is that if you've got a good product, if it's servicing the needs of the community, if you put it forward well, that in most cases you're going to find a sponsor for that exhibition or program or what have you. And I see no reason to believe that that scenario is not possible here in Portland. And in fact, probably more so than it was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Any other questions from the audience? I have one here, I guess.
Fred Warren, I'm a City Club member. I just have a sort of a trivial question, but how do you plan to stage the Chinese Antiquities exhibit, given the space limitations that are already there? Obviously, we're not going to have any new space. You're going to use the Masonic Temple, or what's the plan?
That's what we're working on right now. We have been working with architectural consultants, mechanical engineers, climate control engineers, building conservators, designers to determine the best layout for the exhibition, and in not only the best layout for the exhibition, but the best way to handle our visitors in terms of visitor services of ticketing, acoustic guide, orientation theater, shops, across the board. And as I did say, while we don't have very usable space right now, we have a lot of space right now. And I think that that is the $64,000 question. How do we configure or manipulate or facilitate that space to handle the exhibition? We have about 18 months to do that in, and we're working very hard right now to solve those very questions.
Bill Crane again. John, a lot of our cultural institutions, I'm thinking particularly the Oregon Symphony, are beginning to take seriously a commitment to the whole region, to the state. The Symphony, as you know, has a big NEA grant to go around the state and so forth. And since we're really the only big art collection in Oregon, any possibilities that we could take our collections into other venues in the state? And can't we send some Oregon artists maybe on the Art and Embassies program through the State Department and so forth?
You bet. I'm very concerned, Bill, I'm glad you brought up that question, about our outreach into the state. Certainly the Historical Society has done an admirable job in reaching out. And what I want to do is not just bring people to Portland from other communities, but I want to go to them. And we right now are trying to determine the best vehicle to do it. This is no secret either. We've been in negotiations with a particular company which owns some traveling vans that are outfitted for special museum exhibitions, regarding the possibility of taking those vans full of our objects and works of art, certainly those that are suitable to travel in conservationally stable environments, out to communities around the state of Oregon, and programming and trying to create some interest and some enthusiasm for the world of art as well as the Portland Art Museum. And that's only one way that I think we might be able to go about doing it. Anything else that people, any other ideas that people might have in that regard, we'd certainly like to hear them at the museum. Because we, for all intents and purposes, whether it is literal or not, we are the art museum for the state of Oregon. And I do see it as our responsibility to reach out and provide our resources to as many people in the most appropriate ways as we possibly can.
Robert Smith, a member of the club. I have a question. We have an interesting museum up the river, across the river, in fact, at Maryhill. Have you visited that, and do you have any plans of working with them at this point?
I have been working with Maryhill for about 5 years now. In my last job, as well as at the Portland Art Museum, as many of you may know, it's an unusual and specialized, very beautiful museum that has a variety of treasures given to it through Alma de Bretteville Spreckels and the Queen of Romania. Among those are some wonderful Rodin plasters and watercolors, which we are borrowing for our exhibition that's coming up in November, December, and January. And in fact, Josie DeFala, who's the director, very capable director of that museum, has been to visit us several times. And we're trying to cook up some mutually beneficial joint programs where we in turn might lend back to them during their on-season, because they close during the wintertime, and something surely good is going to happen between the two of us. We will be presenting within the next couple of months a one-painting exhibition, a grand French salon picture, and it contains the personages of many individuals of the latter 19th century, including Sarah Bernhardt. And as many of you may know, the Maryhill Museum now has a wonderful Sarah Bernhardt exhibition on, and we've been going back and forth on some joint programming on how to interpret our own picture once it's unveiled at the museum.
Time for one more question.
Diana Smiley, City Club member. You seem to have an admirably inclusive style, but I'm wondering if you could share with us an issue perhaps in your past around which you've been willing to be controversial or ruffle feathers.
You almost made it.
Nothing of great detriment, just hangs right out there. I will say that probably I'm best known in my hometown, Memphis, for a billboard that our museum once ran during the exhibition of a collection of works of art by Edvard Munch. The billboard had the very famous image of the Scream on it, which was included in our exhibition. And the word simply said, "Have M-U-N-C-H at the Dixon." And it could be read, "Have Munch at the Dixon, have Munch at the Dixon, have lunch at the Dixon." That's about as controversial as I've gotten. Maybe my wife can recall another. Is that the most controversial?
I'll give you a chance to stop while you're ahead, John. Clearly, Portland is to be well served by John Buchanan and his teammate Lucy. Thank you very much for being with us today. We're adjourned.